Good.
All right, welcome back to another great edition of the Forts Athletics Life and Coaching Podcast. I'm here with all-around world-class human Jessica Bridenthal. Jess is currently the head track and field coach at Hillsdale College, correct?
Yeah, Hillsdale.
Hillsdale College. And she's had an interesting path, I guess, on getting to where she is right now. Former a million-time All-American and national champion thrower, Highland Games world champion. But it didn't start like that, right? Like talk to us a little bit about like how you got into, throwing from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's definitely an unorthodox route.
Sure.
My main sport in high school was basketball, and my mom played professional basketball. My brother currently plays professional basketball. That's what I thought I was going to do with my life. So,
Sure.
Yeah, when I went to Ashland, it was on a basketball scholarship, and then I tore my ACL, and I was really unhappy with the program and how things were going there at the time. And my roommate happened to be the girlfriend of national record holder in the hammer at the time, Ryan Lotney, and one of my best friends at the time was Kelly Ash, who was a national champion in the shot. So they were like, "Oh, you should come throw shot, or you should come throw." And I was like, "Guys, I didn't do track in high school. Like that's silly."
Right.
Well, and then when I was rehabbing from my ACL, I was doing one-on-one workouts with AG Kruger for my strength and conditioning for basketball. So anyone that knows AG can only imagine what that was like.
Right.
It was tough, but it was pretty cool. One time I was in there with AG, and happened to be the same time as some of the throwers at Judd.
Mm-hmm.
And Judd walked up to me and was like, "Hey Jess, after your fifth season of basketball, you should come throw for me." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Like that's stupid."
Right.
So kind of just laughed that off, and then I got more unhappy with basketball, and all of a sudden it wasn't such a crazy idea. So then I went and talked to Judd one day, and next thing I knew, he was like, "Well, so I'd love to have you join the track team. Like, what'd you throw in high school? Like 42 feet in the shot?" I'm like, "Sure." Had no idea what that meant.
Right.
I high jumped a little bit in high school the one year I did it.
Sure.
So that's pretty crazy. But it's probably the best little white lie I ever told. And I actually told that story on Valenti's podcast a couple years ago, right after I won Worlds, and Judd called me like literally a half hour after, and he was, "You lied to me? Good." So it was definitely a pretty unusual route, but after I switched, I kind of fell into the best throws program in the country. So it was a really cool blessing, and God works in really, really strange ways sometimes. So
Right.
Yeah, I got into throwing.
So some people that were listening might not know. So AG Kruger, a multiple-time Olympic trials winner, competed at the Olympic Games a couple times, three times, right? So he just happens to be the person that you're working with. So it's not like serendipity had anything to do with this, but.
Yeah.
But because you went on an athletic scholarship to play basketball, so you had, you have some of like the intangible tools, like already like established. Because I think sometimes if people hear the story of, well, they just showed up and they were amazing. I mean, you were kind of already amazing when you got there, right?
Yeah.
To play basketball. I mean, the women's team there, most recently they won back-to-back national championships.
Yeah, they turned into an amazing program, and I'm actually gonna jokingly take credit for that. So when I quit, it freed up the full ride for Carrie Doherty to transfer in from Dayton. So you're welcome, women's AU basketball.
All right. So when you transitioned with Judd, how many years have you been on campus at Ashland before you attended your first track practice?
About a year and a quarter. So it was about like halfway through fall conditioning there.
So you show up for fall conditioning, and people have like talked a little bit about it. Like I've been witness to it a couple times. Like what was that like coming from basketball? You just rehabbed your ACL, and it's like, go push cars and trucks and, lift these odd objects and for as long as you can. Like talk about like that transition.
So I kind of fell into it like towards the end of fall conditioning. It was actually a testing day was my first day. And Judd was out of town. I think he was at a Poliquin conference. I forget exactly what. But they were deadlift maxing.
Sure.
And I had never really deadlift max. Like I had maybe, like I was naturally pretty strong, like maybe had done 185 for some reps for basketball lifting with AG. Like I have no idea.
Right.
So we were deadlift maxing that day, and I was like, I knew how hard it was going to be because I was friends with a lot of people on the team. And I ended up deadlifting 355 for my first time ever doing anything remotely like that. But I think you honestly could have put 400 pounds or 450 on the bar, and I probably would have gotten it just because it was I knew I had to prove myself there because I kind of knew what I was walking into.
So when you did that, so what year was that? Just for
That was 2010.
like,
Yeah, 2010.
so for someone to just walk up and pull 355, I mean that's your borderline world class powerlifting numbers right there.
Yeah.
First go around. So when did you start realizing like, wow, like I might be good at this?
um I don't know. I think I saw a glimpse of it my redshirt year there when I switched sports. Like I was working with like Rob Clank and some people in the weight, and all of a sudden like a couple things would click and it would go really far. Like, but my numbers for my redshirt year are not good. Like if you look them up, like I don't think I threw over 40 feet in the shot. I maybe threw 48 feet in the weight, nothing crazy. And I think I threw 46 meters in the hammer. So again, those are not crazy numbers at all. But then my first year as a freshman, I was starting to get better. Like I stayed over the summer and worked really, really hard, and worked really hard in the fall and was starting to get better. And I made nationals. I think the first time, my first meet indoors, I had thrown whatever, like 40, high 40s, my redshirt year in the weight. And then I opened up at like 62 feet in the weight. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be better at this.
Yeah.
But I think the time that I really realized kind of how good I was going to be was that year at Indiana. It was an indoor meet, and it was like I had thrown like 60, good enough to get in the elite meet, but all these girls were way better than I was. Like we had some 70-foot weight throwers there, and it was pretty nuts. And Judd's like, you just need to lay it all out there and see what you can really do. And I threw like 64 mid that day as a freshman. So that was one of the days I was like, okay, like I'm starting to see this here. Like I could hang with some of these really big athletes and D1 athletes and kind of hold my own a little bit.
So you were kind of bought in from the beginning. I mean, you decided because you're not originally from like the Ashland area, right?
No, Akron.
Akron. Okay, so it's a little bit of a drive.
Yeah.
So never doing track. You're like, okay, I'm going to stay for the summer, and I'm going to kind of immerse myself in this.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about like what like that mindset was of transitioning like basketball. Like I played basketball in high school. Like maybe a little bit more like a finesse sport, right? You don't have to you have to be all jacked and tan to like kind of get through things. But throwing at Ashland with Judd, right? Like the Valhalla of throwing. Mm-hmm. Your freshman year, that first season, you were maybe like middle of the pack amongst your teammates.
Yeah.
And then you decide to, you know what, I'm all in. I'm just going to stay. Like, talk about like, because you could have gone home, like, I'll just come back in August. Like, it's not a big deal. I'll train on my own, whatever. Like, what made you decide to stay?
Well, there was a slew of reasons. One, my senior year of high school, my dad died. So like my home had got like totally switched. Like my mom and sister ended up like losing her house and living in like a little apartment. So there wasn't a ton of home to go home to. Right. But also like that's what I saw like all of my teammates who were really good were doing, like Kelly Ash and some of these people that were staying in the summer and training, like Ryan, or I mean we could go down the list of people that were there training in the summer. And I was like, well, like if I'm gonna do this, like I want to be the best at it, so this is what I'm gonna do. And like that's what you do. Like we threw all summer, a lot on our own, like a lot doing workouts with our teammates, but working really hard to get better every day, because that's when I really saw the biggest difference was a summer of training. And that's what I tell my athletes now. Like, sure, everyone is showing up more or less and doing similar things during the year to get better, but it's all the times when you're not around everyone else. Your coach isn't telling you what to do all the time. The coach isn't telling you what to eat and what to throw and what to practice and doing all this stuff. And like, it's you who decides to get better. And that's actually what I really fell in love with transitioning from basketball. Like basketball, you have to depend on like I was a post player, obviously, like I'm 6 foot tall. But like I had to wait for my post or my point guards to pass me the ball. I had to wait for people to shoot to get rebounds. Like I wasn't always responsible for my own success. I mean, I definitely put in a lot of work. Like I said, like my mom played pro basketball, so I can't even try to calculate how many hours we spent in the gym. But
Right.
so that kind of fed into that type of work ethic already. And then just the type of, like you said, the type of atmosphere that Hillsdale, or not Hillsdale, not Hillsdale, but Ashland provides. I knew I just had to put in the work and get better. And I was surrounded by people doing the same thing.
So talk about then when you start realizing you throw mid 64s, like now you're a player at D2. What that leading up to that first national indoor competition, like what was it just let's see what happens, or like, because like I said, like offline, like I'm not interested in like, how many reps you took with the 40-pound weight or 35 or this stuff, but like the mindset leading up to, I've been throwing for a year. I'm like borderline like world class now, like throwing mid 65s or 64 in the weight. Like how do you approach that? Was it just let's see what happens, or talk about, maybe you don't have to go into all the details of the plan with Judd, but like how do you approach, you throw on Saturday or Friday, like how does that week leading up to it, like what happens?
Judd definitely sets us up for success. Like we do, a lot of things to peak our bodies to be ready to compete, right, through our lifting programs and, like everything that he does, which he's amazing at.
Right.
But I think for me personally, it was a little bit different. Like I wanted to prove myself. Like anyone that knows me, like I'm a borderline psychotic competitive person. Like I'm the person that's going to scream at you playing Monopoly. Like my fiance Jared will not play board games with me.
Yeah.
So like I came in there knowing that like, hey, like even if it's, beating my teammate or, having a PR, like I expected that out of myself. Like I wanted to throw and I wanted to try to win, or, at least get my first All-American.
Right.
And I ended up throwing really, really well. In the shot put, I made finals. I got ninth, but I hadn't thrown that far that year. Like I was like maybe a low 14-meter girl at that time, at that point in that year. But I was like, I know I'm just as good as any of these girls here, especially at that time in Division II. There wasn't any crazy throws at that point.
Right.
That happened a little earlier or later in my career. But so I was like, I'm going to go in there and lay it all on the line. Like, I'm here to win. It's not just, oh, I'm at nationals. Like, this is fun. Like, sure, that's cool for your first time too. But I was there to be an All-American, and I got fourth that year. So I think I threw like 63 or 64 that day.
So overall, like I kind of joked you're a million-time All-American, but so how many All-American awards did you earn while you were at Ashland, and how many of those were national championships?
I have 12 All-Americans, one national champion in the weight. So that was my junior year. My senior year, I had like the plague 2 weeks leading up to it and lost 30 pounds. It was terrible, but I still managed to get an All-American. And then I have 3 national runner-up in the shot put. So that one eats me a little bit. There was a time where I think I only lost by like 2 or 3 centimeters, which was hard.
So okay, so you mentioned that, 'cause that's part of my notes there. So going into those shot put competitions, like you said, most of the time you were top ranked. Some of the times you weren't, like you kind of alluded to. So how did you approach those meets differently when maybe the like social media was kind of like starting to pick up a little bit with like Instagram and things like that? Like, did you feel like outside pressures, like I'm seated first, or like I have to win, or I'm seated fifth, I'm going to show everybody what's up now because I've been kind of like, now we're kind of putting everything together? Did you approach them differently based on how like you were ranked or like flights or anything like that?
So there's a couple different scenarios where I did, especially when I was younger. My freshman year outdoor season, I got way better and was actually ranked second nationals going into nationals. And I did not do well. I did not make finals. Like, it was pretty heartbreaking because I came in here like, oh, I need to do this. Like, kind of that young first time being good mentality. It's a hard thing to adjust to.
Right.
Like I had a huge PR going into it, like, broke 15 meters for the first time, like stuff like that. Like it was definitely a different scenario. But then I think as I got a little bit older and got like, I made 8 national championships, like it kind of got accustomed to what that feeling was. Like the year that I won, I was seated first by a lot, like probably at least a half a meter, maybe more. I don't remember exactly, but I think I gave an interview with Ashland like that week before we left, and they're like, how do you think national championships are going to go? I'm like, I'm going to win. And they're like, you say that pretty confidently. I'm like, yeah, like I know I've worked harder than every single girl in this country. Like I've paid my dues. Like I am that much better than everyone else that I feel like I could go out and have my worst day and win. And which was not great. I did have one of my worst days of the year, but I still won. So.
Right, because when you get to nationals, like we were at nationals at the same time at 2016 indoor, and that was a message that I would, have with my athletes too, that we would talk about, is that, you don't have to PR necessarily to win. Like if
Mhm.
you go to the win, when I was at Fredonia, had an athlete, she was seated, I think, like 7th in the weight, and she happened to PR, out of her mind in round 6
Yeah.
before the next person went in. So, sometimes it works, but then other times, if it's not, like, do you preach that with your athletes? Now, I don't want to get too far ahead, but,
Yeah.
would you rather have, the win and, like half a meter under a PR, or PR and, try and finish, top 3? Like, do you view that differently, or do you ask your kids
No,
what they want to do?
I think honestly they kind of go hand in hand, which is hard to say. It can be a little controversial because like
Right.
at the end of the day, like I'm there to win. I'm there to be the best. And I think my kids have that same mentality. Like I have a tough little group of kids who are awesome that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more
Yep.
about later. But like the one that comes to mind is my sophomore year, my first national runner up. And my highest placing at that time was in the shot put indoors down at Birmingham, whatever year that was. I think it was 13. And I was I was ranked, nothing going in there. I'd maybe thrown like a mid 14, like nothing crazy. And I came out and I just remember being in the ring and being like, you know what? Screw it. I don't care if I foul. I don't care what I do. Like I'm round 3. I'm not making finals at this point. Like I'm just gonna lay it all out there. And had my first 50-foot throw. And like that was the time that I kind of learned how to start competing a little bit. So I think there's kind of two folds to that. Like, yeah, you want to do your best in whatever that is. So
Sure.
obviously you want to PR for me, but that's not going to happen. I think also it's knowing what you have to adjust to take to win. Like
Right.
some of my Highland game friends would joke around with me, like they might throw 106 feet in the hammer, and then on my last throw, I'll throw 106.5, and they're like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's just a thing."
Now, when you transition from basketball, you never threw the discus either, right?
No.
So outdoor, you're All American in the hammer. You're placing really well in the shot put, and then you happen to pick up the discus too.
Yeah.
So for most people, your personal best in the discus as a third event, you win nationals, like for other, Division 3, all, obviously, and things. So talk about how, like, the balance between, indoor, okay, you throw the weight in the shop, it's 12 throws, so it might not be like that taxing all the time. But then outdoor, now you're picking up the discus and you're making finals there too. So did you ever have to decide, we're going to put, hammer or shot put on the back burner, or was it always, well, we'll just throw the discus and see what happens because we know the hammer and shot's going to go well?
Yeah, so I especially with me not knowing how to do anything, and I was a pretty natural shot putter and hammer weight thrower. So that was obviously where we spent the majority of time in my training. I threw a little bit of discus my first year, just kind of learning things and seeing how it's going. Cause like I have a discus frame, like I'm 6 foot, I have a 6'3" wingspan, like I'm long. Um, but then I kind of like, as I got better and better at shot and hammer, and those marks were clearly getting better, we kind of stepped away from discus for a while. And then I think it was my junior year, I picked up discus again. At the time, I was dating the national runner-up in the discus. Jason Sonny threw pretty far. I don't remember exactly, like 57 meters or something. And so I started throwing discus a little bit with him, and I was pretty good at it. But a lot of that was, just like all of Judge training in like, body awareness and how to actually just be powerful and throw. Like I can throw anything. Like that's why I can go into Highland Games and throw a bunch of things. It doesn't matter what you give me, whether it's a keg or a bale of twine in the sheaf. Like you can throw at anything. So um it just kind of like went over to that. But I was probably could have been good enough to throw discus at the national level. Like we saw a lot of glimpses of that at practice, but my shot and hammer just took like a huge dive.
Sure.
So we decided not to throw that a ton as I got older. Once in a while we would mess around with it, but not a ton.
So is that a difficult, like, I mean, maybe it wasn't as difficult for you because you didn't have as much of a background in throwing shot and discus in high school to, sit down with Judd and say, okay, you know what, we're not going to do this because we need to focus on the other ones. Like how, maybe that conversation was a little easier for you in college, but like if you with like your athletes today, if you have throwers that want to throw all 4 implements, like my kids, they always wanted to. I'm like, listen, none of them are going to go well. Like you could throw, all shot, disc, jab, hammer, but don't expect to have good performances. So how do you like rotate that through with some of your kids nowadays?
Yeah. So that is, that's a weird question. It's a question that we face a lot as coaches. Like, how do you figure out what implements for kids to throw? Like, how do you do that for yourself? And I was really blessed, like having Judd as my coach. Like, he was pretty good at identifying people's strengths, and like, I got the experience of seeing that for 6 years. Like, I got to see like how people moved and who he chose to do what and who got better at different things. So I think that carries over a lot into my coaching.
Right.
And when it comes down to conversations with my kids, like, pretty much everyone throws shot and hammer or shot and discus in high school. I have a couple kids that threw some hammer or weight in high school. Sometimes I'll get a javelin thrower from like Missouri or something like that. But that's not something that you see a ton. So a lot of times kids are going into college and throwing events that they've never thrown or not thrown a lot.
Right.
So when it comes down to it and I start seeing those things pick up, like where I'm like, oh man, they naturally counter the ball when they do hammer turns, or whatever those things might be that you see like characteristics of different types of throwers.
Right.
I kind of just ask them a simple question, like you can ask any of my kids. Like, I'm pretty blunt and straightforward. Like, I'm a pretty fun, goofy person, but when it gets down to it, like, it's business and we're working really hard. And I ask them, like, okay, do you want to be good at all three of these things or four of these things? None of my kids throw all four events, but like, do you want to be good at these multiple events, or do you want to be great at one or two of them?
Right.
Like, what are your real goals? Like, is your goals to be a national champion? Well, you're not going to do that by throwing shot put and javelin and discus all together. Like, it's just not going to happen. So, I'm just pretty honest with them. And, sometimes that's a little hard to bite the bullet with that. But, at the end of the day, I feel like they're like, yeah, you're right.
Coach is always right most of the time, right?
Yeah, most of the time.
Most of the time. So you have this decorated career. You graduate from Ashland, and when did you graduate?
2015.
Okay, so you graduated in the spring of 15, and were the Olympic trials of 2016, like, was that something that you were thinking about when you graduated?
Yeah, me and Judd talked about that pretty extensively a couple times. Like, we had seen some glimpses and people would say that, like, oh, you didn't throw the hammer that far. It was like 59, 58, 59 meters. I don't remember exactly. But me and Judd had both seen, like, my PR with the 4K in practice was like 64.
Sure.
So, like, we knew that was something that I could probably have done and trained for is make the trials. And I was throwing that summer and fall going into my senior year. But then I don't know if you know this, my fall, I think it was like October or November, I hurt my neck really, really bad. At the time I didn't know it, but I'm pretty sure I tore at least one of my discs because of my MRIs and stuff now. But so I was out for about 2 months there of doing absolutely nothing my senior year. And I came back and did okay. Like, I still managed to bag, I think, 4 All-Americans that year. But it was a struggle, and like, we only competed like every 2 or 3 weeks, and we were really limited in what we did training wise. So I took some time off that summer and was like, okay, like, I'm just gonna focus on getting healthy, let this rest up a while, and then we'll relook into it. Like, I have another year to train.
Right.
So I actually start training for the trials in the fall, and it was just like injury after injury after injury with my neck. Like, I was so limited in what I could do. And it was really what bothered me was throwing like hammer, is that like extension motion was not one that I could do very well. So Judd was like, okay, well, maybe we should look at throwing Highland Games. Like, he's like, I think you'll love it. Like, you get to throw a bunch of stuff and the crowds get crazy and you get to win swords and travel all over the place. Like, you need to give Adriane a call. Well, Adriane Blewitt, or Adriane Wilson, for those of you who don't know who she is, she's amazing.
Right.
And was like, maybe you should give her a call and see what you can do training wise. So that's what I did. And I started training with Derniat, and then I went down and trained with Adriane for a couple days, and she taught me how to throw everything. And because at the time I was coaching at the College of Worcester. So I was training there at Derniat's in Worcester, Ohio. And I guess how I kind of got into that. So my Olympic, I don't think I was ever going to make the Olympics, but my Olympic trial dreams kind of faded away to something that I could much more easily manage the training. And it was just different movements. So it wasn't that same like overly repetitive motion that I had been doing for years and years and years, the thousands of throws that I had taken.
So you make that transition. So another sport that, I mean, you threw the shot put, but you've never thrown a stone before, or saber or sheaf or light hammer, or any of this stuff, weight for height and things. Like it's just kind of like you're just falling into things. You fall into Ashland with Judd. You fall into the at the time I think Adriane was the world champion, right? Highland Games, right? So you could just
Multiple times.
multiple times. So you just call her up and say, hey, I want to throw, and then you learn how to do it. So what were you expecting, like those first competitions? So that would have been what, like the spring of 2016, where
Yeah, that was spring 2016, and honestly at the time, like I had no idea. Like it was so different than anything I ever done. Like Highland Games is 9 events in one day, sometimes 2 days. Like the first one I did was that spring, and I felt like I literally got ran over by a car. Like it is painful afterwards. Like it's almost the equivalent of doing a decathlon, a throwing decathlon, but it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I just kind of fell into it. Things tend to work like that for me. And so I got into throwing, and there was a couple things that I picked up really, really easy. Like the stones are pretty much the same as shot put. Like they're big and heavy and awkward, but it's pretty much the same. And so I was pretty good with that right off the bat. Surprisingly, I was pretty good at the hammers pretty quickly. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's pretty much like a rock with like a PVC pipe or a bamboo stick or something through it. Like it's really strange. And the technique is not at all like hammer or weight. But it kind of fit my strengths of how I threw. Everyone that watched me throw, like I'm not the most technical person, but I was long and super powerful. So I could get and like have some big winds and hit some really big marks in the hammers my first year. So that was really cool. And then sheaf was terrible my first year and a half, and ended up breaking the world record in that later. But that one that's a pitchfork throwing a bag straight up in the air. Like it is nuts. And caber was pretty brutal my first year. So I had no idea what my expectations were for that first year, but I think I was ranked in the top 3 in the world after my first season.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it
I
was
don't
pretty
even
crazy.
know, like I have so many questions asked. Like, so you never did it before, but you're world class hammer thrower, world class shot putter. So you fall into these implements. So talk about then you're top 3 in the world.
Mhm.
What then? How do you like structure? Living in the Northeast, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, we had snow on the ground up here in Rochester the other day.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's just easy to go pick up a caber and throw someplace, or a light hammer and things. So when you realize that you're good at this, how do you like surround yourself with, okay, I need a facility to train. Like I need to go throw stuff. Like I can't throw a hammer, but I can throw a Highland hammer. It doesn't make my neck hurt. Like, how do you like put those pieces in place?
Yeah, at the time I had just left the College of Worcester to take like a business job in Pittsburgh area. So I didn't really know anyone there, and like I wasn't coaching, so I didn't have facilities to use. So I ended up starting to coach high school, so I had like a place to lift and a little place to throw, which ended up being a cool little blessing. It was really fun. We had a really good time there in Freedom, Pennsylvania. um, but honestly, you just have to get creative and not make excuses. Like, and that's kind of something I picked up from Judd. Like, don't make excuses. Like, we threw outside all year. Like every Tuesday and Thursday, I was always in like one of the small hammer groups. Like most years, it was like me and Ryan Lotney or Garrett Gray or AG. Kind of a big list of some hammer throwers there. And we went out and we threw, whether it was snowing, raining, it didn't matter. So I kind of just take that into like what I trained for Highland Games. Like obviously you can't get out and throw all the time in Highland Games. It's a little different, but
Right.
you just get creative with your training and kind of have fun with it. And there was things I didn't throw all year, and there's things I did, and kind of slowly started buying some Highland Games throwing equipment because I didn't have any. So I threw a lot of shot my first year, and I think I bought one heavyweight my first year. Actually, my stepdad made it, and it was like 32 pounds was the first heavyweight I had to train with. So that was definitely a battle for a while.
Right.
And mostly the competition weight's at 28 is the heavy one. So it was a little bit different, but yeah, just not making excuses and just getting a way to find a way to train.
So after you finish your first season, you're ranked 3rd in the world. How many competitions did you have, let's say that spring of 2016, before you wrapped it up in the fall?
I'm not 100% positive. I'm gonna say like maybe 8. I qualified for Pleasanton, which is one of the bigger games in the U.S. I think the only reason I really got invited to that is because I think Adriane might have pulled a string or two for me. Which having a 7-time world champion is one of your friends doesn't hurt.
It works. Yeah, it works.
Yeah, so I did. That was my first big games I ever did, and then I did Oklahoma Scott Fest that fall too. So That was I kind of merged into it, but not a ton of games, maybe 6 to 8.
6 to 8. Okay, because the other day I was talking to, I don't know if you've ever talked to or met Matt Hand.
Oh yeah, I know Matt.
Yeah, so he was explaining to me that he tries to get like 6 or 8 in a
Yeah,
row, and I was like, what's that mean? And he's like, well, you compete 6 or 8 weekends in a row, and I was like, how can you like do that like physically? Like
I
he's
don't
like,
know
well,
how he
you
does that.
should come out and try it. I was like, no, man, like I'm too old for it. I'm 38. Like I'm not ready to start throwing stones now. Maybe when I'm masters or something. But
Yeah, I need some lighter weights
yeah,
there.
like, seriously, I know. But he's like, oh no, man. He's like, you could get like 20 competitions in a year.
Oh no, I think the most I've ever done in a season is maybe like 15-ish.
Sure.
But no, one was just like my constraints with like jobs or coaching or
Right.
even just like money to travel. So like I don't do a ton of non-paid travel games
Right.
because I'm a college track coach. I don't make a ton of money.
Sure.
So I had to kind of like train smarter, do a lot more local ones, or the bigger ones I did were usually like paid ones.
Right. So after that first season, you're world ranked third. And does your mindset change in regards to, wow, like maybe I can make some money at this? Like this could be like I don't want to say like view it as like a side hustle, but I mean, there's not that many people that can do what you do. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm fortunate to know you. Like I know Adriane, like, between the two of you, you have like 15 world championships or something. Like, so how, how do you get like, you just show up that next season and is like, oh wow, you know what, maybe I could, if I put forth a little bit more effort, or if I structure my planning. Because Matt explained to me like, well, you don't have to throw far at every event every week. Like they take points and then they add up like your best totals, so you could kind of structure your season out a little bit, right? Like in the first meets, I'm going to crush the shot or throw the stones rather, and then the weight for distance. Like how'd you then like start figuring out, wow, like this could pay some bills?
Yeah. I structure my seasons a little bit differently than him, but like coming off my first season, I was like, you know what, like, man, like I'm don't get me wrong, like I worked hard that first year and learning all the different events. So I was like,
Right.
ranked like third. I'm not sure if that was my exact ranking, but something like that. I'm like, and these are some awesome, awesome ladies in the Highland Games, and I was like, I bet you I could work really hard, and it'd be pretty cool to have a world championship.
Right.
So, like I said, I'm an overly competitive person. Being able to say I was the best in the world was pretty cool. So I kind of really worked really hard all year. Like I lifted hard that year. I trained a lot, like throwing outside all year. Like at the time I was coaching high school
Right.
there, and like, I threw a lot. And I really only had a couple throwing events, like implements. Like I threw a lot of the heavyweight because that's what I had the most of. And I think my second games that year, I broke the world record, Adriane's world record in the heavyweight, because that's what I probably threw the most of. It was
Right.
55 feet, so that was pretty nuts to throw a 28-pound weight with one hand. But yeah, I kind of wanted to win everything. So I do mine a little bit different than I would say like some other athletes do. But like this past year, like I hadn't been able to train as much because of some injuries, but I was still ranked like in the top 5 after my first games, and just all of my events put together for that game. So I don't necessarily train one over the other. I don't train a ton of stones anymore because it's one of those events like I've done forever. I don't need to spend a ton of time on it to keep
Right.
getting better. And with some injuries, like I had some limitations on what I could train a lot of.
Mhm.
But no, I kind of just would come out and kind of keep training everything and throw everything throughout like a 2-week period, and try to do everything because I wanted to win weekends, not just, I didn't really care about national rankings too much. It was more about what I did when I showed up at games.
So before your first world championship win, like the week leading up to that, like does your mindset, like did you approach it like you were going to indoor outdoor nationals? Like who do you like, did you talk to Judd, or you competed against Adriane, but like
Yeah.
who do the elite athletes like yourself, like who do you bounce ideas off of? Who do you call and say, hey, listen, like what do I do? This is like, it's really serious now. It's the world championships.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I talked to Adriane and Judd and other people, like my fiance Jared, coaches now, and is a pretty darn far weight thrower too.
Right.
So like me and him probably talk the most about training and what we're doing. But honestly, like at that point in time, like I was just applying a lot of what Judd had showed me and taught me over a 6-year span and carried that into my Highland Games training, which I don't think anyone else was really trying to do. Like, I actually tried to pull off a peak doing Highland Games. It was a little nutty. It was definitely harder to do than I thought it was going to be. Like, with track, it's just so different. There's so many more events. But I think I pulled it off for the most part. But yeah, I had Judd actually came and watched me and Adriane throw that day at Worlds because it was in like Vermilion, like so Cleveland, Ohio area. So my mindset leading up to that week was like, I knew I think I was ranked first, but I kind of like I knew I could win this. Like there's some other really, really talented girls. Like obviously Adriane is a legend in throwing in Highland Games, but you know there's some other really top girls there that year, like Alyssa Hapner or Megan McKee, or you know you could go down the list of girls that are just awesome. But I knew I had put in the work. I knew I was prepared, and I knew I could do it.
So does it get, because I asked Judd this once, and I'm not going to share what he said, and maybe you don't have to share either, but like, does it get old? Like, does it get boring? Like, you win and you win and you win and you win. Like, when do you ever get to a point where you took it for granted, or you have taken it for granted, or you pull the gas off a little bit and like people start sneaking up on you? Because I mean, it's difficult to go full throttle all the time, right? Because you're not just doing Highland Games, like you're a full-time college track coach, right? Like you're getting married, like there's a little bit of a work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
So how do you then start prioritizing? Well, I've won a couple, maybe I should focus on my wedding now, or maybe, guest list or like stuff, things that others take for granted.
Honestly, that's kind of happened the past year and a half, maybe. Going after I won Worlds, that next year, like I still trained, but not as hard as the year before. Like I was like, okay, like I put in my work. Like I feel like I was focusing on other things. I had gotten a head coaching job and was coaching, year round at that point. So that was a little bit different scenario. But I was like, I know I can keep doing it. Like I love the people in the Highland Games, especially the women are just an awesome group of girls. Right. Like I loved being able to travel. Like I got to go to Alaska for free. Like that was pretty cool. So I'm like, I'm going to keep training. And I ended up getting second that year to Liv Tyler, who's one of my best friends, and she's amazing too. But now after that, like I was like last year, like I was facing some injuries. Like I said, like I've had neck problems since my senior year of college. So I kind of laid off training a little bit. Plus I moved to Hillsdale where I'm at now. And, I love Hillsdale, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more later. So I've really kind of found more of a passion for coaching, and kind of what I've said to them, like, don't get me wrong, like I loved what I accomplished in college and what I did in the Highland Games. Like it was amazing. It was rewarding. Like those are things that I'll never, ever forget. And I had to work really hard for that. But there comes a point where I'm like, I've done it. It's cool to keep doing it. And I was doing it more for something to train for and something socially. Right. But now, like, I want to help the next generation of throwers be able to accomplish those things. Like there's nothing like standing on top of a podium at NCAAs. Like that is a cool feeling. Right. And like I want my kids to be able to have that, like the athletes that I have now. And like that's obviously different for everyone, but so that's kind of actually the transition I'm in now. And then I found out about a month ago or a month and a half ago now that I tore 2 discs in my neck, and the one's really, really close to rupturing. So I actually had to shut down Highland Games training. And so now I have a couple ideas in mind and things that I'm going to do that are less like drastic movements, like that I think I'm going to have to step away from throwing totally. But there's some other things that I could do that are a little bit less insane than, throwing 100-pound logs in the air.
Triathlon.
I don't know about that.
It's not that bad. Like that. I mean, that I fell into that, and it's not like my first season, like I'm pro or something. It's horrible, but you still feel like it's like a similar euphoria.
Yeah.
Like I was never a national champion thrower or anything like that, so I don't know what that feels like to stand on the podium. But to accomplish like, wow, like I'm gonna finish this race in 2 hours, like that. Yeah. Like that was pretty cool. I mean, just to kind of like throw it out there for something to be interested in.
That's what I have, like a couple tools in my toolbox that we're working on a little bit here, and we're gonna see what plays out. But right now, I would say 90% of my life and energy is going into coaching and doing what it is, which right now, obviously, it's a little bit of a weird time. But, there's some things up my sleeve, and right now I'm not really cleared to do anything. Like I'm having a lot of nerve problems with my right arm and stuff. So until I'm cleared to do more, which they think it's going to make a recovery where I can still do stuff. Like I can't do any crazy motions, but so we'll see what that takes me. But that's kind of where I'm at now, is like, I feel like I've achieved kind of what I wanted to, like most of my big goals athletically. Like obviously there's people that can keep going forever, but sometimes injuries and life get in the way a little bit, which is fine. Like I feel like I can walk away from my major athletic career of, trying to be a world-class athlete and be like, I accomplished a lot of really cool things and can feel good about that.
So when you make the transition to full-time coaching now, so you how long have you been at Hillsdale?
This is my second year.
Second year. So you walk in the first year, so you're an accomplished thrower, accomplished athlete, world champion across the board, and you're sitting in front of your kids for the first time, right? Your athletes. Like, talk about how, like, was that an easy because it wasn't your first coaching position, but like when you're given the keys to the place, right? Like, talk about that transition then. Like, was it difficult for you being like so, intense and I'm going to beat you in Monopoly? And because you might have athletes that don't want to be national champions, right? Like, how do you balance that?
Actually, like, and I definitely faced that scenario more when I was at Worcester and Keystone, but walking into Hillsdale, like Hillsdale's an amazing track program. Like they've been national runner-up. They were program of the year in 2016. Like they have a good track program. And I don't know how familiar you are with Hillsdale as a school, but it's a very, very prestigious school. Like it's ranked right in the middle of the Ivy League schools. So I kind of got a lot of super overachieving, smart, athletic kids that
Sure.
falls right into like my repertoire and like what I'm familiar with. Like Ashland is a pretty good school, not ranked anywhere near Hillsdale academically, but like I was the GMAC Commissioner Award, which is the Student Athlete of the Year. So like I had a 3.98 in my master degree. So like I valued education a lot.
Right.
So this was a really, really good fit for me. So I think that alone kind of like earned the respect of a lot of my athletes. The one I'm going to kind of call out and pick on, which I also walked into a super weird scenario. I had 7 athletes and they were all freshmen.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was nuts. It was a really, really weird scenario that I walked into. But I remember like within probably my first week of being there, Michaela, one of my throwers, and like she's amazing. She was like, yeah, I remember like as soon as I heard like there was going to be a new coach, like I was super scared, like I didn't know you, like I didn't know what to expect. And then she's like, and then I saw you and you're super intimidating. And then she's like, yeah, but when I first heard, like I went online and like read your bio and I was like, holy crap, like this girl is amazing. Like she's going to help me like accomplish the goals that I want to accomplish. And Michaela was pretty close to making nationals this year. And I think I have no doubt that she probably would have made it outdoors in the discus, but that's another story. But she's definitely, as a sophomore now, I think she's someone who's going to be a big impact in the national world here in the next year or two. So most of my kids right now like really embrace that, like, the shock of what fall conditioning was, which obviously I didn't do exactly what Judd did. Like it's a different scenario, it's a different atmosphere. But it was hard. It was definitely way different than anything they had ever done. And I think every single one of them had cried at some point throughout the fall. But I think they started to respect that. Like they saw what I did, and maybe some of those people that weren't really sure what they wanted out of college throwing kind of was like, wow, I have kind of a unique opportunity here to do something I maybe didn't know I was capable of. And like my one girl, Nikita, I think she was ranked 19th in the country in the shot put out of high school. Like she was a 50 or 45 high shot putter out of high school. So she was a really good shot putter. So she kind of came into that mindset. She's like, I want to be a national champion. Like I want to be an All-American. And she made nationals this year in the winter, but we were there for 2 days and it got canceled.
Wow.
So I kind of really blessed with the group that I kind of fell into. Again, like I said, like that tends to happen for me. Like it was really weird having a bunch of freshmen. Like I played a lot of roles for them. I was obviously their coach, but I was also their upperclassman teammate that had to show them how to do drills and how not to be an idiot underclassman freshman when that's all we had. And also there's times when I just had to be their friends. Like we didn't have this huge squad that I was used to being at Ashland. And it was just a really different challenge for me, but like it has been awesome.
So how do you, since you kind of mentioned it, and well, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So you're at nationals, right? Mm-hmm. And everyone there is notified, hey, by the way, thanks for coming, but you can't compete because of what's going on in the world right now. What goes through your mind? Like, I know what would have gone through. Like, I would have lost my mind at 2016 nationals if we would have been there and they're like, hey, by the way, you can't compete. Like, how do you internalize, like, wow, like, okay, like this has never happened before in the world really that we've experienced? And then how do you explain that to your athlete who, like, they've been busting themselves for 18 months, right? They're a sophomore, and like, and it's pulled out from under them.
Yeah, honestly, it's something that like we none of us could have ever seen coming. Like we got there and then all of a sudden like there was no spectators and we're like, okay, like that's gonna be a little weird atmosphere, but like that's okay. Like we'll still
Right,
bring the energy.
right,
And then 3 hours later they canceled everything. And within an hour we were in a van driving 18 hours back from Alabama.
right.
Um, it was really hard to process. And there was a long point where we're like, okay, well, like it's just gonna be a couple of weeks. We still have outdoor seasons. And then by the time that we got home, literally everything was canceled from outdoor nationals to GMAC championships to everything. Um, and that was a hard pill to swallow. Like my kids have worked really hard. Like we had the highest scoring women's throws program in the conference indoors with two sophomores and a freshman. Like I was really excited to see when we get outdoors and pick up some of their stronger events.
Right.
It was kind of hard, but you know, and my poor Nikita, my shot putter, like it broke my heart. Like you could just see like all of this dismay and disbelief in her face. And like, you know, it was definitely a challenge and definitely took some time to process things. But, you know, I feel like if we are who we say we are at Hillsdale, and that's like being excellent, like that's a lot of things that we talk about with our team and being staff, like, and kind of takes into like my kind of motto in life, like you don't make excuses, like things happen for a reason. Like if we really are who we say we are and we want to be excellent, we want to be the best. And like I said, like I want to be the best and I want to win. And I feel like a lot of my athletes feel that same way. Like we got to find a way to get it done. And like some of the kids are really blessed and they have, you know, squat racks in their basement and awesome. Some people are like, yeah, I have my mom's 10-pound dumbbells. What the heck am I supposed to do? So we've had to be pretty creative with stuff. But, you know, finding a way to get stuff done and keep throwing and keep training and make the best out of this. And I think this is going to be one of those things that, you know, don't get me wrong, like it's heartbreaking for a lot of these high school seniors and college seniors that might never get that time back. Like
Right.
my neighbor next door is one of our hurdlers. I live next to a bunch of track guys.
Sure.
And he was like, yeah, I didn't know my last race was my last race. And like, that was pretty heartbreaking to hear. But for the majority, especially all my athletes right now are freshmen and sophomores, I was like, maybe this is an opportunity. Like we got to find a way to look at the light side of things. Like this is something that you're going to remember the rest of your life. Like your whole track season got canceled because of freaking coronavirus.
Right.
So it's pretty crazy to think of. Like I've never heard, like I cannot possibly fathom being an athlete at this time. Like I've tried to put my head in that scenario and I'm like, I don't honestly don't know how I'd handle it. But with my kids, we're like, we're not making excuses. We're finding a ways to work hard together and, you know, challenge each other and make it fun. Like right now we have, like a silly group chat going on where we pick like different challenges to do with each other. Like today they have to grab their laundry detergent and do bump hammer turns to the right, bump hammer turns to the left, back and forth. And like, you know, just doing fun stuff to try to get creative and keep active. But, you know, I think this is also something that can be turned into an opportunity. Now there's more eligibility. There's more time to train. Whether every single one of those athletes takes that, probably not, especially at a school like Hillsdale where everyone's going to be doctors and lawyers and going into some crazy graduate programs and stuff like that. But, you know, some people will stay and some people, you know, it's more time to train. It's more time to get better. And my super young team maybe now is you know, a junior, sophomore, freshman team now, which is a little bit different looking at going into next season. So it's hard to look at the positives in a scenario like this, but that's what we're trying to do and trying to find a way to get better.
So before I let you go, like I've been asking everyone, like, so what's your one like nugget or like piece of wisdom and advice for somebody who's, you know, either transitioning to throwing or they have a mindset similar to yours that, you know, I'm going to be the best no matter what. Like what couple words of wisdom do you have for them?
So the one thing that I'm talked probably most about to my athletes, and it's so cheesy when you think about it, but is belief.
Mhm.
And belief in what you're doing, belief in what your coach is doing. Like you need to find a school, a college, a program, whether you're an athlete or a coach, that you can really believe into and buy into what they're trying to do there. Like what's their message? What are they really about? And that's
Right.
why I love Hillsdale. I don't think I'll ever leave. Me and Jared just bought a house. So you got to find some place that you could believe. But the thing that's way, way harder to do, like I feel pretty confident saying that my athletes believe in me, believe in what we're doing. Like they believe we work hard, like we bust our butts.
Right.
And they believe they pay off because they've seen how much better they've gotten. Like numbers don't lie. The harder thing is to be able to believe in yourself. And that's a lesson that took me a little bit to learn as an athlete. But I think a little bit takes over time. Like, if you put in the work on a continuous basis, like, there's going to be a point where you're like, I deserve this. Like,
Right.
I deserve to be the best. And that's how I felt going into that national championship when I won the weight, was like, I know I have worked harder than every single girl in this country. Like, I deserve to win this. Like, I've done everything I was supposed to do, from diet to sleep to stress management to literally everything that goes into it. So finding a way to believe in yourself and believe in your coach, and believe that all of the hard work that you had has paid off. And don't get me wrong, like, we could talk about that for a lot longer than this little
Right.
blurb. But
Right.
that's kind of what me and my athletes work with a lot, is how to mentally approach practice and to mentally approach meets, and what are their goals, and how do you believe that, and do you believe that you've done what it takes to be that way? So, like, do your goals and what your life is like, do they match? Are they the same? Because if they don't, if you say you have these crazy goals but you're only doing this much, like, you're not going to get them. So believe in what you're doing, and believe in yourself, which is easier said than done, but it's something that we work really hard at here.
Well, I appreciate for that little bit of advice there. Well, I mean, you did prompt, like, I think we should come back for another one, because I have a million more questions for you. And,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like you're too busy right now, like most coaches in the country, right? Just kind of hanging out. But, I appreciate your time today for sharing your information and stuff. And we'll definitely have to catch up again.
Yeah. Awesome. I would love to.
All right. Thanks, Jess. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Bye.